Oh, do you know, the world's going mad. The economy's dreadful. It's freezing cold. Oof, even my coffee's cold. It's not going to get any better either. There's strikes here, and come the new year, there'll be a new strain of COVID that we'll all get, and then we'll be back in lockdown again. You see, it's just going to be awful. It's awful. Well, that was a pessimistic opening, wasn't it? How did it make you feel? It made me feel bad, and I knew I was pretending. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about optimism and pessimism, and we're going to talk about why, if you're a pessimist, you need to change your mindset. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to do it. At least how to start to change your mindset. So, yeah, when you have negative thoughts or hear negative things all the time, it makes you feel bad physically, doesn't it? You know, when you watch the news and it's bad news and you feel it physically. I tend to feel it in my tummy. Well, what happens whenever you have a thought, good or bad? Your brain releases chemicals. So if you have a good thought, your brain releases a little bit of dopamine, and that makes you feel good. But when you have a negative, pessimistic thought, your brain releases neuropeptides, and that sends signals to your body, and you feel bad. But then the signal goes back to your brain, and you start to feel the way you think and think the way you feel, and so on. And that's why it makes you feel bad. As I say, I tend to feel it in my tummy. You may feel it elsewhere. But if this goes on, it leads to, because obviously when you're in that state, you're in a kind of fight or flight. You're in a fight or flight situation, which, if it's constant, it leads to permanent low levels of stress. This leads on then to headaches and stomachache if you're lucky. What it can do is lead to major aches and pains, possibly heart disease, diabetes, even cancer. Even cancer. It can make you sick. In fact, this constant pessimistic, negative way of thinking can actually kill you. And I don't think I'm being over dramatic there. If you think about this over the course of your life, if you've constantly had this low level of horribleness, it's going to affect you physically. Now, you may or you may not identify with being a pessimist. Just listen to this. Tell me which one of these applies to you. So, if something can go wrong, it surely will. Good things never happen to me. Nothing ever goes my way. It's all going to go wrong. Or does this sound more like you? In general, I expect more good things to happen than bad. I'm always hopeful about the future. When things are uncertain, I tend to expect the best. Which one of those is you? Well, if you sound more like the pessimist, don't worry about it, because optimism and pessimism is a personality trait. It's a mindset that you can change. Yes, you can change, and you can choose which one you want to be. From here on in, you can choose which one you want to be, an optimistic person or a pessimistic person. It's a choice. However, as we know on this channel, things aren't always that black and white, and it certainly isn't easy. If you spent most of your life being a pessimistic person, it's going to take a little bit of work. But that's why everything I've just said, that's why it's worth putting the effort in. Because even if it doesn't make you physically sick, it's certainly not doing anything for your happiness and well-being, is it? Which is what obviously what my interest is in this. And so, optimism, pessimism, it isn't black and white, obviously. Let's just have a look at this. Just have a look at this. It's on a continuum. optimism and pessimism. So you can see from this, we have the extremes of pessimism. Oh, we're all going to hell in a handcart on one side. And on the other side, we have, oh, everything in the garden will be lovely. Now, these are extremes, and most of us tend to fall somewhere along this continuum. I don't think I know anyone who feels that everything in the garden will be lovely, despite the fact that the house is burning down beneath them. However, unfortunately, I do know people who are, we're all going to hell in a handcart. I'm sure you do too. The problem is, as you can see there on the continuum, for the extreme pessimist, going along there, we have varying degrees of negative emotion. Now, once you get caught in that pessimistic, negative way of thinking, you get sucked down into what we call the downward spiral. Now, joking aside, once you get into that downward spiral and get so far down, very often it's difficult to get out of it, at least not without professional help. So it is quite a serious thing in that sense. And then equally, when we go over to the positive emotion side, you don't want, once you have a little bit of positive emotion, you get sucked into the upward spiral, which is what we want. However, you don't want to be this Pollyanna positive person who's so positive that they don't see the train coming. And on that note, when I was doing my research, I came across this, and I don't even know who'd written it, but it made me laugh. So a pessimist sees a dark tunnel. An optimist sees the light at the end of the tunnel. A realist sees a freight train. A train driver sees 3 idiots standing on their track. Oh dear, I just thought that was hilarious. Anyway, back to optimism and pessimism then. So, as I say, most of us tend to be on this continuum along the line somewhere, and of course it is also situational. Some instances you may be particularly pessimistic and others optimistic. In fact, in some professions, you need to be a pessimist. A lawyer, for example, needs to have a pessimistic way of thinking. They then have to try and temper that in their personal lives, of course. And so there is such a thing as healthy pessimism, which is what we've got down here. And healthy pessimism then, what do I mean by that? The healthy pessimist has a strategy of being prepared. They expect negative outcomes, but have a strategy and are prepared in case it happens. Okay, and then we have the realistic optimist, which is probably, I think, where I fall. I am an optimistic person, but realistic optimism is about being able to see what's wrong, but be hopeful about being able to put it right. So our person who's everything in the garden will be lovely while the house is burning beneath them will be hopeful that they can get down and reach some water to be able to put the fire out so that everything indeed will be in the garden will be lovely again. That's the difference there between those two things. So, as I say, it isn't actually black and white. What we need to do here is to find a balance. There needs to be a balance between optimism and pessimism, and even healthy pessimism and realistic optimism. We need to fuse these two things, and we need to find a balance. Now, you can do that. I'm going to start you. You can start to change your mindset and find this balance. Would you like to do that? Would you like to find the balance in yourself between pessimism and optimism, and therefore increase your effective living, increase your health? But of course, optimists don't get away with not having stress and all of those things, they get those things too, but they approach these things differently. That's the difference. So do you want to know how to do that? If you do, just hit the like button down below and I'll tell you how to do it, just how to do it. Hit the like button, I'll wait for you. Well, I was going to tell you anyway, you know that. Why should you bother? Why should you bother, first of all, before I actually tell you? Why should you bother? Well, this is just a few reasons why you should try to move over from being a pessimist to an optimist. Optimists are higher achievers, and that's because a pessimistic person, if they can't do something or if they fail to do something, then their attitude would be, I'll never be able to do it. I can't do it. I'm not going to try again. And so they don't try. Yes, fixed and growth mindsets do play a huge role here. The high achiever who fails a test would think, right, okay, I've got that wrong. I can learn more. I can try again. That's the optimistic person. Optimists are healthier, of course they are, because they don't have this constant fight or flight stress hormones being released into their body. Yes, they will feel stress in other ways through other things, of course they will. But as I said, they are able to handle them better and they are more resilient, which is incredibly important, to be able to recognise something is wrong and to be hopeful that you are able to handle it. So emotional wellness, they have higher emotional wellness than pessimistic people. They have lower stress in general. They have better relationships. Of course they do. Who wants to be around someone who's like this all the time? You say, it's a beautiful day. Oh yes, but it's going to rain this afternoon. It's tiresome. It's hard work. You don't want to be around someone who's like that all the time. So the optimistic person has better relationships and they live longer. They live longer. Optimists live longer. So now you're on board with me, hopefully, in wanting to change, believing you can change, because if you believe you can change, you can change. You can change. Okay. Let's have a look then at a few lovely, simple things. Now, these are simple things. We could get deeper into this, and if you want more along these lines, then we'll go into this deeper. But the first thing, and if you've been with Happy Stuff and for any length of time, this will probably come easier to you. You need to train yourself to look for the good. You need to train yourself to look for the good and to see the beauty. I mean, this happened to me just the other day, actually. As I said, it's freezing cold in England at the moment, but it's very picturesque. And I was driving home and I was getting myself into a tiz about Christmas and the fact that I'm not prepared and the trees are not dressed yet and all those kind of things. And I was passing the lake and I saw this vision of nature, and I pulled in, got out of the car, left all of my issues on the car seat, as it were, metaphorically speaking, shut the door and set off to walk in nature. I'm telling you, it is cleansing. It is cleansing, but you have to have the intention of going to look for beauty. Literally, when you get out of the car, leave your issues behind and think to yourself, I'm going to go and find some beautiful things. I'm going to look closely and see what I can see that I haven't seen before. And then be mindful. So walking in nature, it really works. It isn't just a simple thing. It actually works. It's incredibly effective and cleansing. And as I've said, once you get that little bit of positivity, then you're on the upward spiral. Read positive literature. I have a book specifically in mind, which I couldn't find this morning. It's called Learned Optimism, and it's by Marty Seligman. I'll leave the link down below. By the very nature of the title of the book, Learned Optimism, this tells you that you can in fact learn. to be optimistic. Now, there is a genetic element to this, but I do believe it's only about 17%. So if your folks were this, like these pessimistic people, okay, only 17% of that will have come down through to you. The rest is learned pessimism, I guess. But Marty Seligman talks about that too. So this book is it's well worth a read. Do good things for others. We know this. The more you do for other people, the better you feel, the more optimistic you actually feel when you know that you have purpose and meaning. And that gives you purpose and meaning, helping other people. This is important too. Choose who you surround yourself with. As I say, if you're constantly with someone who's like this the whole time, it's catching. It makes you feel bad, and that's what you don't want. Along the same lines, create a lovely environment that you live in. Make your home or your office, your workplace, a pleasant, beautiful place to be. You know, I've talked about this before. I have videos on it. I'm sure I'll talk about it again. But my home is my sanctuary. And again, when I come home, it's a cleansing place. Cleansing place. Watch a funny movie. Simple. But watching a movie that makes you laugh, or a comedian, or a series that makes you laugh, lifts you, gives you those positive emotions which broaden and build you, which make you more optimistic, which help you to be more creative into solving any problems and issues that you might have. We're not talking about being in denial here. Stop watching the news 3 times a day. I've talked about that. I know you need to keep yourself informed, but not on the hour every hour. Please. Equally limit your time on social media. Subscribe to Positive News. Positive News is a magazine, that tells you about everything good that's happening in the world. Now you can get it online, or I believe you can get it delivered to your door. I think in the States there's an equivalent paper called Yes. I'm not sure. Have a look, but it's so nice to have in your inbox someone telling you what's going well in the world and what's happening for the good in the world. Do that for yourself. I'll leave a link if I can down to Positive News, but in the States, as I say, check out Yes. And then be mindful, as I've already said, stay in the present moment. You know, being pessimistic is having bad thoughts about the future. Keep yourself in the here and now. Notice what's happening in the here and now. If you're constantly thinking bad thoughts about the future, you're not seeing the flowers as you're walking by. Again, I know these things are sometimes simple, I know, and possibly even a little bit cheesy. I don't mean it to be cheesy because it's so important. It's so important that you look for the good and see the beauty. And you can only do that if you are being mindful. And then listen to the words of Wayne Dyer. I know I'm quoting Wayne Dyer a lot recently, but he said, now in actual fact, it was Max Planck, the quantum physicist, I do believe, who said this originally, and Wayne Dyer appropriated it for the personal development world. But he says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It's so good I'm going to say it twice. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Oh, make it your mantra or your affirmation, but write it out and put it on your bathroom mirror to remind you of how to do this. This is the way to start to change your mindset from being a constantly pessimistic person to a more optimistic person. And as I've said, not denying what's going wrong, but choosing the way you look at it and choosing the way you think about it. Optimism and positive emotions will help you to build resilience, to be able to deal with things and to be able to be confident that you will handle this, whatever's going to happen in the future. So, optimism and positive emotions get built, which in turn increases hope, which in turn increases optimism and well-being, and then you're on this lovely upward spiral, which is where we want to be. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe. We'd love to have you with us, and the next video is going to be a fluff video, possibly just chatting about Christmas and so on. Hopefully I'll be a little bit more ready for it by then. I'm sure I will be. Okay, I'll see you next time. Until then, remember that on the Happy Stuff and Fluff, we're getting happy, living longer and growing younger. See you next time. Bye-bye.